My name is Chuck DeSanti. I'm the chairman of this Urban Land Institute TAP. And you have seen a number of the panel members. This is the list. You'll be hearing from quite a few of these panel members this evening. I won't go into the excruciating detail, but what I'm about to do is I'm going to ask Carla Coleman to come up and just talk for 30 seconds plus or minus on the Urban Land Institute, its membership, etc.
Good evening. We've had a very crazy 2 days here in Deerfield Beach.
Riviera Beach.
I'm sorry. You can tell that I've been up since 4 this morning, literally since 4 this morning, in Riviera Beach. And we are pleased to be here. The Urban Land Institute, of which I am the staff person for, is a 75-year-old nonprofit membership organization. This slide I needed to update before I stuck it in. We're now 38,000 members worldwide and about 1,000 here in Southeast Florida. We've been doing technical assistance panels for local governments across the region for about 12 to 13 years here. And our organization is a research and education organization dedicated to best practices in land use and development to build sustainable communities. And by sustainable, I mean sustainable in all ways. Economically for the residents that are there, environmentally, and for the next generation. Technical assistance panels are gatherings like this one where a panel of ULI volunteers come in and spend 2 days in your community doing the on-site portion of the work, which we completed today. They have no conflicts, and again, as I said, they are volunteers. They are all seasoned real estate professionals from someplace in Southeast Florida, just not necessarily right here in Riviera Beach. We don't let people who live or work in the city serve on these panels because we don't want anyone with a bias. But many of these people, by virtue of their long history in Southeast Florida, certainly are familiar with Riviera Beach. Panelists, as I said, work on site, and then we offer non-binding advice to your public officials and staff. And I want to emphasize that it's non-binding advice. They can take it or leave it, but at least they have the benefit of a well-thought-out report. We will talk a little bit about what comes next. I will tell you at the end of this process there is a written, published report that we will give you, and Chuck DeSanti and anyone else who is available will come back and formally present that to your town council.
Thank you, Carla. The basic question that was asked of us was to review 5 publicly owned sites to determine where the most appropriate location for City Hall and related services, library, public works, police, fire, and community facilities, if you will, would be located. We used these 5 sites were given to us as the target sites. The first one, we are standing here in 600 West Blue Heron Boulevard. The second site, which is, they call it a portion of the municipal park, we call it 601 West Blue Heron Boulevard. Then the 2-acre site, which you all know as the original City Hall site on Broadway and 22nd. There is a 13.3-acre site, which is located on 13th Street. That will be the subject, as all of the others will be the subject of our comments and recommendations with respect to each site. And then finally, there is a 6.4-acre site, which we know and you know as Avenue L. The panel's process, which you're looking at, is a schematic of the day and a half. On the left, it started at noon. It went through 9 o'clock formally, and then for many of us, it went to 12 or 1, and then we started again at 7 and we work through, by the time we get through here, it'll probably be 7 o'clock, so that'll give you an idea of what we've done. We broke it into 4 teams, and the photographs on the right sort of just indicate where the teams were in the process as those photographs were taken. But we all come together in a series of 5 group sessions throughout, and it was sort of amazing at the end of the day how all of it funneled into, well, we believe it to be a cohesive and meaningful recommendation. So here are the questions. Which sites would be best to meet the city's needs? If some of the sites not suggested for the use, what would the city do with that site or with those locations? How should the projects be phased? If possible, to determine how should the new facilities be funded? And you know, that's a tough question for every municipality, everybody. What immediate next steps should be taken? And we've sort of identified those as well. This is a slide that sort of indicates each of the 5 sites. We have designated them A through E, and with that, I'm going to ask Barron to come up, and he is going to walk you through those sites. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing? Good. Well, I'm going to take and walk you through a little bit of our work, and I'm hoping you're going to be gentle with us. What you're seeing here is effectively the initial byproduct of the last 2 days. Between now and when you get an actual formal report, there's going to be a subsequent meeting, I believe another public session on the 22nd. There's going to be additional work and research to back some of the stuff we hear from you, as well as some of our thoughts. Our work essentially boils down to us attempting to give you the benefit of our collective wisdom. Our team includes individuals who have economic development backgrounds, individuals who have transportation, real estate, and financial analysis background, as well as law, and we also have direct real estate experience. And so we try to use the short period of time we have together with you, your comments, and our understanding of real estate generally to give you what we think are some of the opportunities for you to consider as you decide to go forward. So we've taken each of these sites and we've developed some commentary on them, and I'm going to give you an introduction to it. Oh, okay.
On the right.
What works best is probably the mouse.
Okay. There we go. All righty. So you don't get to, you're not going to see this very well, but the handouts will be available to you in electronic form, and I'm not sure where, also in physical form. Essentially what we started off with is an assessment of the individual sites, information that was given to us by staff, sizes of the properties, understanding the land use, understanding what was desired to be built, and then using our experience as it relates to construction to put together some sort of conceptual estimate as to what it will cost. Now, certainly, we're going to be wrong. Is it very wrong or a little wrong in terms of the cost? But we are going to be wrong. But directionally, it's more than 0, if you agree, right? So that what you're seeing here is you're seeing a synopsis of that, and the bullet point here is our conceptual, and I stress that word, conceptual estimate in our non-binding recommendation to staff in the city is that if you were to do all of this, we think that that number adds up to somewhere in the $60-ish million range. Don't be scared by that, because there's a lot here in a pretty ambitious plan. Okay? Are we going in the right direction? So a little bit of what we heard from the public this week. So from you, the residents of Riviera Beach. You can read it there, but you want facilities that are accessible, easy walk between the buildings that are in a complex setting. Clearly free parking, which you're obviously not from downtown Miami, but you want free parking. You want us to recognize the fact that your community is enriched by being a multi-generational community and with pretty well distribution of the generations reflected. We heard that. You want us to understand, and this is not a collective, but they're different opinions, understand that we're building for the future, and Riviera Beach is going to be here 5 years from today, 50 years from today, and 500 years from today. And so whatever we are experiencing today technologically is going to change, and that needs to be thought about in terms of how we use physical real estate. You want us to, you emphasize the point that the present facilities, many of them, are at or near the end of their useful lives and need to either be redeveloped or substantially renovated if they're going to be maintained. We also heard of a petition being circulated, so clearly there is a healthy discourse amongst the residents as it relates to what would happen to the City Hall facility, which we intimated as a discussion that was more about what do you want representing your city on Blue Heron Drive, and how do you want to cater to and provide access to residents for civic services. Clearly, the site and facilities folks are passionate about that. There are other pressing issues that exist in the city, so why have the discussion as it relates to doing stuff now, spending money now, which is always a conversation. And then finally, not simply to be limited to a few comments. Now, we are at a distinct disadvantage in that we're a couple of humans. We think we're particularly intelligent, but we will never be able to get the full measure of the city's or the residents' perspective. I'm not sure anyone will, but we certainly won't. However, know that these 2 days are just the start. We will have another follow-up session. I am sure the residents and those, to the extent this is on camera, who have opinions know the emails of individuals in the city, so you'll be able to provide comments, and they will deliver those comments to us. So anything, we are prepared to weigh your commentary, because our job or our mandate, since we're not being compensated, is to give you the best insight, and our insight is useless if it doesn't respond to the perspectives you have individually and then therefore collectively. Yeah, and so next we're gonna talk a little bit about mobility and connectivity, and I'm gonna allow my colleague Jessica to talk to you about it.
Thank you. Good evening. So before we get into the details of the specific things that we recommend on those 5 sites, we thought it was important to take a look at transportation, which is kind of the foundation, of course, of how the community will be able to get to these individual sites. So this first slide here is actually a snapshot of a 25-year-long plan that Palm Beach Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is part of the county, adopted last fall. And the reason I have this up here is because I just wanted to highlight, as a transportation professional, we always want to make sure we look at everything from a system perspective. We want to get up to that macro level and really understand how all of the pieces of your transportation system work together across all the different modes to get residents to their places of work, entertainment, etc. So here I want to highlight specifically that we know you have a roadway network that we'll be looking at connecting to your sites, as well as a transit system. So the county adopted Tri-Rail expansions to the west. So you see that green line going out to the VA hospital for support there. And then we're also looking at a Tri-Rail potential on the eastern portion of the community as well. The specific station locations are to be determined over time, but I just wanted to highlight here that you have a great network now, and it's only going to get better ideally over time. The modes of travel that we consider when we're doing site planning and looking at the network are all modes of travel. So we have the auto, transit, by foot, so those walking to places, by bike, bicycle, and then also the freight, commercial vehicle, and trailers. There's a lot of marine traffic in the area, so we want to make sure that the trailers are considered. And then, of course, your emergency response vehicles. We want to make sure we're designing our systems so that those vehicles can get to you quickly in case of emergency. Who are the users of the system? Sometimes traffic engineers can get lost in designing things for a car when there are people in the car. So we want to make sure that we're designing everything for the users. So here it's really listing everyone. The community is using the system, so we need to recognize the senior population, the children, the mom with the strollers, the disabled, the person going to their job, everyone. So we really wanted to make sure that that was thought of in the context of these individual sites we looked at. So the key transportation goals, we broke up into 3 different categories. One is within the site itself, within those 5 sites, immediately surrounding those sites, and then third is at that bigger network level. So within the sites, the goals that we came up with, and this really related directly to feedback we heard yesterday from the community, is walkable, easy to navigate sites for all users. So again, from your mom with a stroller to your seniors, that they're walkable and easy to navigate. Safety is important in these sites, that they're well lit and that you feel a presence, a safety presence around you, that they're comfortable and shaded, especially in Florida. We all deal with that heat, so that shade trees are there. It's very important. And then the parking for all users. Within the site themselves, or surrounding the sites rather, they don't only need to be walkable within the sites, but also across sites so that you can cross streets safely. You can get to a transit stop safely. If there's parking off-site that you use, you can get back to your vehicle safely. So that was very important. And then the overall network needs, so looking at the different roadway facilities and transit lines through the community, just making sure that you have access to those and that there's mobility. There's not a ton of congestion, that you're able to get to your residence or your employment very easily and safely. So the kind of high-level recommendations from a transportation perspective, and then we'll move it into the specifics for the sites. So to match those goals within the sites, we're recommending for any and all sites that we have shaded, lit, designated walkways between buildings and to and from parking. So again, that was directly related to the comment we heard yesterday for seniors accessing these sites. It's very important that they can easily get to and from the buildings and the parking. Surrounding the site, we noticed on Blue Heron, it's potentially a little dangerous to cross the street. At the transit stops, there's no crosswalk immediately adjacent. So recognizing that for any site, we really think it's important that for people walking and biking, et cetera, that they can get to these sites safely when crossing roadways with fast traveling vehicles. Regarding the transit stops, we thought it was important to upgrade transit stops that already exist, that they all have shaded areas so that you're not sitting in the sun waiting for a transit vehicle. We also think lighting is very important. You use transit all day long, not just during the daytime hours. So having lighting, having up-to-date maps and schedules, and real-time information. So this is something that the city can work closely with PalmTran on trying to upgrade transit stops that exist today, and then also potentially as you develop sites throughout the city, looking at new transit locations that again are convenient and easy to access. For the overall network needs, we felt looking at the system that the community would really benefit from a citywide shuttle system, looking at a type of trolley that would circulate throughout the city and bring residents throughout the area to different places. So here we just listed a few, but for example, your parks, schools, stores, doctors, the civic uses that we're looking at within the site, entertainment. So that was something, again, not specifically just to seniors, but because of that mention yesterday, I want to highlight that. But even beyond seniors, just really anyone to use that trolley system, and you can keep the community local using what you have here. And should you want, that shuttle system would connect to that larger regional network that PalmTran runs and that Tri-Rail runs. So with that, I will pass it back over for the information on the specific sites.
All right. Now I'm going to really ask your forgiveness because here you get to get our opinions. And you may like them, you may not like them, but that's what opinions are for, right? So we're going to step through the individual sites and give you direct perspective on our thoughts. Again, limited perspective on Riviera Beach, limited insight into the wants and needs of the residents, but enough to be able to give you the benefit of our professional perspectives with a specific focus on the various sites. So you know them by many names, but Site A, the orange color, effectively your City Hall complex. Site 600 Blue Heron. Site B, 601 Blue Heron, multiple names, but I believe you also call it the Wells Center, but effectively your park area. Site C, the green color to the right, your 23rd and Broadway site within the Marina District. Site D, in the lower left and in the blue, I believe that's your 13th Street or 13th Street site and existing building. And then Site E, which I think you know generally as the Public Works building. So we took a look at each of those and thought about, one, the uses that are there today, your desire to make sure that those facilities are accessed by residents in the most effective way, and those buildings are state of the art, and then as well the market opportunity that we saw for doing a bunch of things, catering to creating an active environment for residents, but also catering to creating a commercial environment that could support your tax base as well. And so here we go. Site A, your current City Hall. And so a couple of perspectives. We believe that it makes sense for utility, police, and fire to stay on Site A with an opportunity for there to be expansion. I know there are various thoughts and there are plans that have been conceived, and there's certainly spatial needs that are there. And so we think it's expansion and or redevelopment depending on the perspective of the city. If to the extent that new construction is being pursued, we believe that you have to do that, and you should take the opportunity to do that with what's called thoughtful urban design. Basically designing the buildings, so that they are more easily accessible by people. That includes how you walk between the buildings, and that includes how the buildings invite folks to come in and out. A little bit more details later, so you will see in the report that we'll deliver to you that we will expound on this, but this is just a preview. Certainly, we believe that on Blue Heron Drive, we see that as a natural pedestrian hub, an opportunity to create an arrival. I've heard it articulated as downtown. We think of it as the civic center. Simplistically, think of it as the people hub. That's where the residents do stuff. And there are other places in the Marina District as your commercial center. That's where the businesses do stuff, right? And so we think Blue Heron, the way to treat a street such as Blue Heron, which is significant to you, in a respectful way, and also to make it most appealing to the residents, is to buffer it. And so to the extent that currently the utility strip on the western portion of the City Hall complex fronts Blue Heron, we think you should consider some level of buffering. We believe that should be continued for as much of the expanse of Blue Heron as you can stomach, because it's going to pay dividends for you in the long run. Now, the thought that we had, and you would have noticed, I didn't make reference in the first slide to City Hall or the library staying on Site A. So I gave away one of our other recommendations, but focusing on Site A. If City Hall and the library are not sitting on Site A and fronting Blue Heron, then that presents an opportunity to do something. We believe that opportunity is to position that site in the future, if and when City Hall and or the library should vacate, positioning that site for some private development activity that activates that corridor and potentially generates income. That could be a host of things for you to consider. It could be active adult housing, or it could be other commercial uses. It depends on your perspective as to what should happen at this point. With any development that you would undertake with private parties, one of the things we would encourage the city to consider strongly is to begin to follow the perspective of negotiating for quote-unquote community benefits. And when I say that in the context of Riviera Beach, we think you're graced with a tremendous commercial marine industry. Our quick study suggests that less than 5% of the people who work in that spectacular industry are residents of your community. We think that's an opportunity that you are missing, And one of the ways for you to start to change that dynamic is to consider negotiating with the assets you own for training and hiring of local residents. So there's some good jobs that many of us are driving by in the area, and we think there's an opportunity with your public assets to do that. Other cities and counties in South Florida are doing that. I would not say it's routine, but it is increasing in prevalence. And so parts of Broward, parts of Dade County, the cities and the county negotiate for companies that take their land or lease their land or take their money to train and hire local residents. And so that's going to be a recurrent theme as we're going through. I'll get to you at the end, brother. You want to hold the question, or you want me to address it now? Okay. Let me go through it, and I'll address it later. All right. If you were to do anything and you think this recommendation of finding a private use to program the frontage of Blue Heron, if you think that that's a legitimate plan, we would suggest that you consider some sort of long-term ground lease structure as opposed to selling the land. So maintain ownership of the land with the city so that you have the ability to maintain control and to negotiate terms that are to your liking, and also to enforce those terms if they're not lived up to by the private entity. It can be done with a sale, but it's much easier regulated if you actually maintain ownership of the land as the landlord. Moving forward, Site B, which you know is your well site. We believe this site presents an opportunity to do a couple of things. One, the City Hall and your library complex, we think would be a wonderful complement with your existing public and recreation amenities on the well site. And so we are suggesting that you consider the practicality of moving City Hall. Of course, the appropriate budget exercise has to go through. You're looking at a building that's near the end of its useful life. So at some point, you'll make the decision to redevelop the site, and the question is where. We believe there's an opportunity to move that to Site B. With the library being moved, I know there have been thoughts about the sizing of the library. One of the things we would encourage you to consider, the modern thinking around libraries in a digital age is not that they're irrelevant, but that they're even more relevant, but need to be modified in a certain way. And instead of used purely as a library or as a place to access computers, consider designing them to be sort of community centers that include a host of things that are about sharing information, whether it be about voting, whether it be about community groups having small meetings, whether it be about access to the computers and so forth. So we think that you should conceive, whenever and wherever the library is developed or expanded, consider having it become a community center that includes traditional library functions, but also includes some of the other civic stuff that is just about citizens getting information from each other or from the city itself. Right? Again, with the existing facilities, there's an opportunity to reconceive the site. And so the idea here is not simply to plop the buildings onto the sites where there's vacant land. It's to reconceive the sites, and you have a rich athletic history, and we think that you should enhance that by, at some point, addressing the gym. Again, another building that's near it's the end of its useful life, so it needs to be redeveloped at some point, somewhere. We think you keep it on that site and redevelop it as part of a site plan that would now include City Hall and the library, as well as the field. And there are multiple fields that are there. We have no perspective or position on how those fields get dealt with, other than the fact that we are in South Florida and football matters. So we think there's one thing you should do. Everything else, God bless you. Right? Shared parking should be considered, and that's simply, we're going to have multiple buildings serving multiple purposes, and we think the individual buildings will generate their own parking need. What you will find is certain things will happen frequently in the morning, certain things will happen in the evening, certain things will happen during the week, certain things will occur on the weekend. So you don't have to build parking for the individual buildings as if they're in isolation. You can build it for a larger site, and the planners who will assist you and the designers who will assist you will understand how that process will work. So consider shared parking, which will be a space and a money saver in the long run. Again, thoughtful transportation connectivity is important. Whatever our perspectives are, and different people have different perspectives on bus and bikes and trains and all the other things, we believe that the city has to think through mobility. And mobility is not about individual brands, but mobility is about how do people move around effectively, efficiently, and cost effectively. And what you will find in many more developed areas, and again, Riviera Beach is going to be here 50 years and 500 years from today, there are going to be more people living here and around here tomorrow. So, everyone, if this planet stays the way it is going to turn into an urban-like area with high density, and folks are going to be concerned about traveling to places with a decent amount of time and at a cost-effective basis. And for folks, particularly middle income and poorer, transit ends up being a significant hardship for them. Just think about the cost of your cars, your insurance, parking if you have to go to the places that charge for parking. And so access to transit is an important and a useful tool that helps your residents save money, which helps your community be more attractive to a wider range of incomes. So we're agnostic as to trains, planes, automobiles, and brands, but we think mobility is an issue of servicing your residents in a way that allows them to live a more full life by having more time, more money in their pockets to do as they choose, as opposed to being locked to the road system that is ever crowded. You heard Jessica mention that there is a regional system and there are regional thoughts, and I know we all don't agree with every element. In Miami, we go through that same issue, but our region is a democracy of some sorts. And so in that context, collaboration with your peers and active involvement is important so you can get the best outcome from the planning that will be done with or without you involved and connected to you or going around you. You have taken the bold initiative of renaming a strip of road within your city, President Barack Obama Highway. We believe you did that for a particular reason, and that's to pay respect to the person, but also to pay respect to the significance of that particular roadway. If you're going to do so, then speak as well with your actions. And we think one opportunity to speak with your actions is to make sure that whatever happens on Site B, the well site, that you are appropriately buffering Barack Obama Highway, President Barack Obama Highway, with a landscape buffer so that it is a pleasant drive and it is transitioned from being seen as just an industrial conduit to actually being a roadway that takes you to your civic center. So there we say it as landscaping, but there are other activities that can be done. What you see here is I've just, and there's a third. Actually, let me talk about this site, and I will come back to that slide. So this is your public works site. We call it Site E. Our perspective there is there are two opportunities. One, given the investment of infrastructure that you have with the site works, we believe that should be maintained on the site. How is where we have some additional thoughts. We believe the site can be site planned such that there is to the southern portion of the site, whether that's a southern 50% or 75%, we'll leave that to your able staff and the planners who will work with them. We believe you should program that site to include two components. Public works, well situated in a decent and modern building to the southern portion. The northern portion, which doesn't front Blue Heron, but is attached to the site that fronts Blue Heron, presents an opportunity for you to conceive something else. That could possibly be a future use of public, or if you decide at some point in the future you have no need for expansion of your public facilities, is well positioned to be incorporated in a private development that could generate income and could also provide you with community benefits. And again, when we think benefits in the context of Riviera Beach, we're primarily, though not exclusively, thinking training and hiring of local residents in the industries that you're generating here. And so I want to go back to this slide to show you. So what you see here is our view of what is happening between Wells, City Hall, and the Civic Center, generally fronting Blue Heron between Australia Avenue and I believe it is Avenue E. We think of that as your civic center. We've heard you say downtown. When we professionals think of downtown, it has multiple layers. To simplify it, it's the people hub where your residents do stuff. Your Marina District, some could argue your Marina District is a downtown in a sense. I would say, so that we're all speaking apples to apples, your Marina District is a commercial hub where businesses in the maritime industry do stuff. F5? Yeah, right. So what you're seeing here is our articulation of that Riviera Beach Civic Center. I'm sure there are other names that could be thought of, but we're giving you our simplistic thoughts. And this is, we believe at a minimum, aside from the things that we've referenced for the individual sites, Blue Heron should be treated here in an appropriate way, in a way that is conducive to safe and pleasant pedestrian experience, because people will walk it and you want more people to walk it, in a way that is pleasant for those who are driving through so they understand and appreciate that they have arrived at the heart of where the people of Riviera Beach do their business. They know when they've come into the legal city because you have a wonderful sign on the highway, but this is an opportunity to show them when they've arrived at the heart of what you call your real home. And there are techniques for doing that, and some of them simple, what you do with the sidewalks, what you do with the median, and how that reacts and how that influences young people, middle-aged people, and old people as they cross the street. What you do with the lighting for those who are transitioning the area on foot, bicycle, bikes, and cars in the evening. So we think of this as the Civic Center where the people do their business, and in that capacity, your City Hall site and your Wells site present great opportunities to move and reprogram the civic facilities, whether they're on Site A or Site B, but also present opportunities for you to consider doing transactions that generate income without taking away the facilities, and also, more importantly, accommodating expansion and growth of these facilities. So moving on to the Broadway site, which we define as Site C, we arrived at just a thought, which was if New York has a Wall Street, Riviera Beach has a Marine Street, and it's Broadway. So the basic idea here is to recognize that you have an industry that everyone in your community acknowledges and embraces. You should do things that clearly own it and clearly market it to others. And if you're going to do that, we believe one of the mechanisms you can use is to be intentional about how you use your real estate. That said, we are not, we're in the real estate business, but oddly in the real estate business, your objective is never to simply just do real estate. It's to do the right real estate at the right time. And the punishment for not doing so is very harsh. So here we see this site as having greater future potential than its immediate potential. And so our suggestion to you would be, in the short term, in the interim, we say 5 years, but no one here is Nostradamus, and none of our middle names are such named. So we think you should find an interim use to prepare yourself for the opportunity to have a maximum option in the future. That option could be, should you so choose, a civic facility. We believe a greater option in the spirit of supporting your Marine Street or your industry cluster is to position that for some form of commercial income generating use, whether it is you sell it or you lease it. Again, we've given you a perspective before. Leasing gives you greater control. We think you should start to use your control to ask for money, and in addition to money, to ask for benefits and certainly training and hiring of local residents. So here we're suggesting for short-term uses, consider something that is privately managed that activates the space. There are things, there are marketplaces, there are bazaars, There are other types of activities, but something that is non-permanent and not even semi-permanent, but something that allows you to use the space now to draw activity to the area, to promote the future of the Marina District, and potentially to generate some revenue, not substantial, but some revenue, that then lays the stage for a future opportunity. We think the future opportunity is a mid to high-rise structure. I believe your current zoning is 8 stories. Your discretion as to whether it's 8 stories, 4 stories, or it's more stories, but square footage translates to money and opportunity, or translates to more people and more business, but that's a decision that we all have to make. How much is enough? Structure any transaction, again, to include community benefits, training, and hiring of local residents, and we believe that you should not, and I missed this earlier on, but training and hiring should not start and stop with construction. That's certainly an important part of it. But we're talking about getting your residents more actively involved in the industry that you host in your community. So permanent jobs. And we think there are opportunities to do so, and certainly with your real estate, it has value, and anything that has value can beget a conversation as to how you're compensated for that value. Site D, the industrial building, 13th Street building, we believe that building, and particularly with a focus on are there opportunities to generate income now, we believe that building has the opportunity to realize its full economic potential now. How you do that, there are many ways to do that. We think that you should entertain the idea of some kind of lease or potentially some kind of sale, whatever it is, with particular conditions. And those conditions should take into account attracting an employer who can generate a significant number, right, not a few, but a significant number of well-paying jobs. And if you get the theme, with your land, what do I want you to do? I want you to negotiate we want you to negotiate for community benefits so that some of those significant and well-paying jobs can go to some of your residents now and in the very near future. Structure the transaction to provide you with significant income, right? The only reason to make this site wholly available to a private enterprise is because you think it's going to create an economic benefit for you, direct with money, or indirect with money in the future that comes from taxes and things of that nature. Whatever transaction you enter into, whether it's a sale or a lease, there are mechanisms, and I'm sure your CFO for the city and others are well aware of this, that will allow you to convert that, whether it's a lease and certainly a sale translates to immediate money. A lease can be structured in a way that allows you to immediately realize the value. So if you think it's worth, and I've heard numbers, $10.8 million, I hope you can get more than the market could ever bear. If it's $15 million, there are ways to structure that so you have that money now, and then you can have discretion to use it for your other capital planning, which could include some of these other buildings, or may include some of the other things that you will want to do to activate the area. And now I'd like to bring up my colleague Eric to talk a little bit about our thoughts on some of the funding options that are available to you, and you'll hear some similar themes. Eric?
Good evening. Well, you just heard our vision for your civic center. You also heard that we're using a very conceptual, very rough estimate of about $60 million for the total cost. And again, that's not an exact number, but the important thing is it's a big number, and it's a big enough number that we've been asked to come up with some of our thoughts about how to make that a smaller number, how to reduce the cost to the city of this civic space. And you just heard about our thoughts for Site D, that we're envisioning either selling it or leasing it in a way that's going to give the city the maximum amount of money today to use for other projects. And that's a consistent theme. And the city's actually in a pretty fortunate place. We've condensed the buildings you need in our vision to 2.5 sites, and we were given 5 sites to look at, and so there's about, well, 2.5 sites that are going to be available to either sell or lease to generate additional revenues to the city to reduce that $60 million cost. Again, so long-term leases we recommend because it gives the city more control over the private developer on that site in terms of hiring local residents, providing the training they need, and so forth. But there is a way to turn those lease payments into the maximum amount of dollars today that could be used to fund some of these facilities. Right now, the police department, which has a facility on site, requires more space than it has in its current facility. And as a result, it's leasing spaces all through the city at a total cost of about $200,000 a year. And so building a new police station, even though that's part of the $60 million, it's also important to think about those savings, that those additional lease spaces will no longer be necessary. And that has a value that can be captured today as well, that could be used to fund the new facilities. We're also suggesting investigating lease buyback through organizations such as the National Development Council. And also there are nonprofit facilities and nonprofit foundations, and also some private corporations that offer grants for certain types of public facilities. So we're thinking about the library and community center spaces being an example of where we might be able to the city might be able to pursue some funding, some grant opportunities through nonprofit and corporate entities. Another option would be to use traditional public financing to issue bonds that will be repaid over time through likely tax dollars, but there are other ways to do the bond financing. For the public facilities, we're recommending using what's called a design, bid, build approach, which is, in brief, it is the quickest way to do it and the least expensive way to do it. It's you hire an architect to draw up the plans, and then you put it out to bid, and whoever comes up with the lowest number builds a facility. And it takes the least amount of time, it's the lowest risk, and it's the lowest cost. And another benefit of that is by doing this as quickly as possible and sending it out to getting the facilities built quickly allows the city to get the ball rolling and to attract new private development that would generate tax dollars, more jobs, and more possible revenues for the city to help fund these facilities.
There's a duplication there, Eric. I think we got one bullet point twice on that slide.
Thank you. I won't say it twice. And another duplication, but I will repeat the significance of the design, bid, build approach is it kind of picks a direction, goes through it, and gets the result the fastest, which is going to give the city the most opportunities to attract more private investment for more jobs and more tax dollars and more other funding opportunities. And somebody's going to talk about phasing. Oh.
All right, so you've not booed us out as of yet, so we don't take that as acceptance, but we take that as you being gracious to allow us to continue. So humbly thank you. Now we're going to talk a little bit about phasing. So what do we think is a reasonable course of action in terms of how you proceed? And we've broken it down simplistically into 3 categories: now, soon, and later, right? In order of how close they should occur. And so we think now, in the now category, certainly spend the time for this site if you agree with some of the thoughts that we've given, to master plan or to site plan how the police, fire, and utility, how the police, fire, and utility will be situated on the site. Now, we know these buildings exist and have existing footprints, but there are considerations for expansion and or redevelopment. So you should spend the time now, we believe, to think that through if you buy into the recommendations that we have proposed to you. One point there you see is there's the school behind us, and certainly it's a property that is owned by a separate entity, the Palm Beach school system. We think there's an opportunity, given that it is attached to the site, given that it does accommodate residents to a certain extent, and given that it is a civic facility, for it to interface with the site. How do you get in and get out? How can you move if you're interested in moving between the buildings? So we think you should seek to enter a joint master planning effort with them. That does not have to be an invasive process that requires a whole lot of work, but simply recognize that you're neighbors. And so if there's anything to be done, let's talk about how we can do it in a way so that your palm tree doesn't hang over my fence and vice versa, right? For Site B, we think you should also master plan or site plan Site B. So whatever it is you decide to do, if you're going to be building stuff, Site A and Site B, we think you should get started in conceiving that. And if there are arguments to be had, if there are discussions to be had, if there's dialogue, however you care to phrase it, start having that now, because this process is not like wine. It doesn't get better with time. Okay? Good wine, that is. Bad wine for anyone. For Site C, which is your Broadway site in the Marina District, we think if you buy into our concept that it's real use, its maximum use is in the future, and there should be an interim use that is temporary in nature, you might as well get busy with figuring out what that is going to be, and whether that is a solicitation that solicits ideas, whether it's a conceiving of what should be there with the community so you can dictate what goes there. You should start that process and start to have that property serve as a real activation in that area to the extent the city can influence. For Site D, your 13th Street property, we think that you should prepare for and pursue that transaction now. Again, this all assumes that you believe what we've suggested is a worthwhile idea. If you understand the basic premise, we think that property can realize its full value now. If you agree with us, why wait for the opportunity to get full value and in this marketplace that is cyclical in nature, right? And given that you will have a need for capital, regardless of how you decide to situate the buildings will need some work, whether they sit here or they're going to be moved to other locations. For Site E, which is your site work building, this we think is a pretty straightforward slam dunk. Site work, migrating them to another site would be highly challenging and exceedingly expensive. It could be done, but we think it'd be, so they're going to stay there, or they should stay there is our recommendation. And if that is the case, their facilities are near the end of their productive life. Now, mind you, now doesn't mean when we walk out the door, so you decide if now is 6 months, 3 months, a year, but now is not 10 years in the pace that we think about life. Finalize your funding strategies, and that was sort of simplified, but one of the things that we assessed as an opportunity for you is to really think about what the economic development strategy is for the city. I'm a big fan of arguing with the intent of coming up with a solution. So if we're going to argue, let's argue in a respectful way now so that we can leave here and enjoy our weekends. I don't mean now, technically, but I'm leaving soon, so I don't mean now. You look too excited. You look too excited. But have your arguments, and we think one argument or discussion you have to have is what is your economic development strategy? We've made certain assumptions from what we've heard, but you should think about that. And you have staff that they have well-informed thoughts about it. Some have different perspectives on it, but they're smart people who want the best for the city. And so you all should figure out collectively, since you're going to live here and work here, what that should be. What there should be a plan as to how you're going to have the place be sustainable for the residents and attractive to businesses. Soon, we think the soon, and in part because work needs to be done. Once you've master planned and thought about what to do, you need to actively do it at some point. We think that that should be in the soon category as opposed to the later category. So not for me to tell you whether that's a year or 2 years, but it ain't 20 years, and it probably ain't 10 years, and vernacular intended. So develop and expand the police and fire station once you've master planned the site. Develop and develop City Hall and the library / community center. Practicality would suggest that if you have an existing facility, you need to build and have a new home before you leave your existing home. So if this building has a limited useful life left, you have to make a decision as to how quickly you plan and start planning for the new building, whether it's here physically or in another site, as we suggest. And now the future, not the later, the future is for Site A. So this site, again, if you buy into our proposal that you can move City Hall and the library across the street, then where we're sitting now becomes one of a couple of things. It's going to be parking, it's going to be grass, or it's going to be a building owned and operated by the public, or a building that accommodates private uses. We think there's an income opportunity for you to consider, given that somehow, some way, dollars have to come, and they're either your dollars or others, and everything, so if you have good and well-located property that can be functioning in a use that you find favorable, whether it's owned by a private or public entity is indifferent. So if you agree with the idea that after City Hall, that City Hall and the library can and should be moved, after that occurs, we think at some point in the future you should evaluate and explore a private development that generates income. And again, if you do anything that is engaged in private development to generate income, we think you should also consider incorporating public benefits. Pursue for Site C, pursue the permanent development as outlined. So Site C, if you recall, was in the Marina District. So at some point when the market is ripe and you either decide that it makes sense to build, or someone offers you an economic opportunity or community benefits that you can't turn down, then at that point we believe that you should consider now extracting full value, financial and otherwise, from that particular site. But that's in the future. And finally, Site E, and if you remember, Site E is the site works, civil works building and public works building, and we suggested that it could be designed such that the northern portion of it would have no immediate need for use. We had a healthy discussion between us, and we believe that if you're holding it for the future, at some point you may decide that you need to expand your civic facilities, because if you're successful in everything, everyone always wants more, and especially well-paid staff, right? At the same point, no suggestion about what the staff has indicated to us. But at some point, you are going to be faced with the decision, should this be developed now on Site E, the portion that is close to Blue Heron? And if it's to be developed, do we have a need for it for public facilities, or is there a private market opportunity that we would like to put the property into? And so that's a future thing that we think you should delay. It has no immediate need. With that, I'd like to bring up Sharita, my teammate, to talk a little bit about just some broad observations that we had going through the process.
Thank you. Good evening. And so essentially, we have talked a little bit about creating an economic development strategy. And historically in economic development, when we talk about measuring success, we look at job creation, we look at average salary, we look at the types of jobs that are created, we look at additional square footage, we look at a number of things. And so what we're suggesting is, if you decide to adopt portions of this plan, we think it's important that you look at this as an economic development strategy around these parcels. And as a result, create metrics and a dashboard to evaluate sort of where we are and how we're moving towards success on these measures. So that, for instance, if you want to say jobs created, let's look at the benchmark now. Where are we now with the number of jobs available in the community? And then where do we anticipate being as a result of the sale, the lease, the restructuring of these parcels moving forward, the expansion? You know, where are we going 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years on job creation? You know, figure out what those numbers are and then start to track. Let's look at where we are now and where we want to be and measure that so that every quarter we're reporting. Some of that could be staff reporting numbers. Some of that could be numbers coming from, you know, your development partners. If you're bringing in development partners, some of those could be, you know, just different things. It might be you're activating a parcel and you're using it for a community use. You've got somebody on the weekend with a clicker tracking to see how many residents are using the site at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Okay, let's walk it and see what the foot traffic is on a Sunday afternoon. We got somebody else with a clicker, you know, doing that. Where are we now? And then where do we think we want to be as we move forward on that? So that's kind of where this metrics and dashboard piece comes in. It's not just saying, okay, where are we with the sale of parcel A or reconstruction on redevelopment on parcel B? It's, you know, where are our end goals? You know, and what do we want to see and how does that look? And then let's back into those numbers and start tracking that activity moving forward. So again, jobs created, residents hired. It could be the number of residents trained. It's the number of residents going through, you know, particular industry programs. Income generated. Right now, if we're looking at potential income on 4 different sites, right now we're at 0. Okay, we may not be able to forecast what that income will look like, but we definitely know we want that to trend up. So at some point, let's start looking at that. And it may be, okay, for these first 2 quarters, the income's 0, but these are the activities and the steps that we're taking to move that from 0 to something else. And it could be we're talking to a couple of development partners. Well, you know what? That's part of the quarterly report. So that on, you know, property, and it could be D, okay, we've engaged in 4 different conversations to take that from 0 to a different number. So again, start looking at what kind of metrics and numbers that you want to track, create that dashboard, and then every quarter say, okay, we're going to hold each other accountable for moving towards those numbers, as opposed to saying, okay, where are we on A, where are we on B, where are we on C? I want to know, where are we on the numbers, where are we on the metrics, what are we doing to move those numbers up? So again, increasing the tax base. We know what the tax base is on all these parcels. Okay, well, we know where we are now. Okay, where do we think we're going to go? If we're not able to forecast that, at the very least, we want to be tracking that on a regular basis to make sure it's moving up. And again, monitoring private investment amounts, easy enough to do. And so again, it's not all staff reporting. It comes from a number of different areas and arenas. But again, we're looking at things that we need to be tracking moving forward. And so that's just sort of, from an economic development standpoint, some general observations. And I know it seems like additional work for staff, and you know, chances are it probably is. And so there's some things to figure out there, but that's an entire community conversation, is looking at those numbers. It's looking at where are we on visitors to the library now, and how are they using the library, and what's missing as far as programming at the library, and then starting to look at a library plan and looking at, okay, you know, once we start programming this and we get community input and it comes online, let's start tracking those numbers now. It would be amazing to see what the numbers are now and what the numbers are once it's built. You know, were we successful in all of these different efforts? So again, moving forward, whichever pieces we choose to adopt, or you choose to adopt, whether you adopt any or all, it's important to create that economic development strategy around it, but then also create the metrics and the dashboard to make sure you're measuring the things that you want to measure. You know, are more people taking the trolley? Okay, so we've got this new trolley. It's 0 now. How many people are taking it during the week? How many people are taking it on the weekend? Is it trending up? You know, shade, you know, bus ridership, all of those different things. So again, economic development, additional square footage, the revenue coming in, the jobs created, the number of people trained, you know, the people, the different pathways, all those different things. And I think that's important at some point to have sort of, you know, a community meeting where you decide, how do we decide what success looks like? You know, if we put in a trolley, what does that success look like? Is it more people riding during the week? Is it more kids riding in school? Is it, you know, more seniors riding it on the weekends? What is that? And then start tracking those numbers. So that's kind of, you know, in a nutshell, how we tend to look at metrics and dashboards and economic development. But I think it's important to have that conversation as you start adopting pieces of any plan, and it might not be this plan, but any plan. You adopt the plan, but then also look at the numbers and the activities that trend those numbers from where they are to where you want them to be. Next. Let's see.
What is the next slide?
I think that's it. I think it's Chuck. Talking about next steps.
Next slide.
Next steps.
There it is. I did my job, right?
Yeah.
Sincerely, though, on September 22nd at 6 p.m. in this room, we will hold a second, I'm going to call it a resident workshop. And I would think, after speaking with some of the staff, that from 5 to 6, there may be even an opportunity to show the initial resident workshop, which if some people didn't connect there will be an opportunity to I'm not sure you can bring sodas in here, but
Yeah, we can.
well, you can. Okay, good. You can grab a soda, and from 5 to 6, you can sort of hear and see what was discussed the first time out. We will then give you a very short overview of what at least our preliminary thoughts had been. You've heard them tonight. Others will hear the synopsis. And then we'll have an open dialogue on how you feel about certain things, how you feel about the sites, what we've recommended, should we do something a little bit differently, how you feel about things. So, having said that, I want to, a couple of things. One, I want to thank you sincerely on behalf of the panel for the hospitality, the warmness, the seriousness with which you all have taken this effort. I will tell you, about 11 o'clock today, I wasn't so sure, okay? This is one heck of a team. They took it very, very seriously, and we're about to find out how seriously we took it. No. Yes. Right on. How are you? Good. Good to see you.
And one question.
Should I turn this?
Yeah, just bring that one to me, Charlie.
Bring this to you?
Yeah, bring that to me. You can actually use it, or
Oh, okay.
however you want to do it. Oh, you want to use it too, huh?
Good evening. First, I want to thank our city for providing the opportunity to hear multiple views, to give the city something to consider. And thank you, Chuck, for taking the time that you did yesterday. I like the idea of us not selling our property. I like the idea of leasing, negotiating great jobs. I kind of look at that from 13th Street and J. If we could lease that property and creating great jobs. I learned a more definite number that there are 30 trains that's going to go past us every day. 30. Now, ideally, I noticed probably a week ago that our paramedics had to sit out there while the train passed. I'm feeling that eventually there's going to be an overpass. Either the train is going to do an overpass, or either there's going to be an overpass on Blue Heron. And if there is an overpass, that means the overpass will be over our city structure if it stays here, or on the south side of the street. And I like the ideas that was presented. But if there's an overpass on 12th and West Palm Beach, on 12th Street. Some people call it Palm Beach Lakes. When that overpass was put there, it kind of destroyed the life of that community. And I'm wondering if there's an overpass here, how would it affect those great things that you said about, that you created here or on the south side of the street? That's my concern. Basically, what you presented sounds very good to me, but I'm thinking pretty soon with the growth that I feel that would happen to our city, an overpass is going to eventually have to be there, and how would that affect it?
That is an excellent question, and one we actually thought through and discussed with city staff when we were going around touring the different sites. Looking at the current plans for transportation projects, the train is in the plan. An overpass is not. So right now, there is no overpass planned for Blue Heron or for the train, and everything's going to remain at grade. So the impact to the land surrounding those facilities, in the current plan, it's not impacted, and you can develop it as you wish. Should things change, because we can't predict the future, we don't know what conversations are going to be had in the future. I know that community input and outreach and involvement is of utmost importance when you get into that stage of looking at alternatives should there be a congestion problem because the train's being at grade. The Department of Transportation would approach your city and your county and having those discussions of how to best alleviate any congestion and what are the pros and cons of multiple alternatives. But right now, the land is not impacted due to transportation projects in the books, if you will, because of the train. So did that answer your? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I think I understood she addressed the first part of the question, the way we think about it, how the land is impacted. I believe you were asking about the utility of it, people accessing it and using it, and just the level of people activity. If you noted the way that we described the actual, what we envision Site A, this site, and the well site to be effectively the people hub or the resident hub. We think regardless of what's happening around and regardless of the inconvenience that may or may not be created in getting here, if this is legitimately about serving the residents of your city, it is going to remain in demand. So folks are going to go to football games, folks are going to come to City Hall. They may be 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late, but they will still come here. So we see this as the Civic Center, AKA the People Hub. What you will find, and you know, no perspectives on the trains or the overpass, but if you can't have traffic that directly accesses you, if people are flying over you, by you, driving around you, or over you, then certainly that creates a challenge for them to end up where you are. That has greater impact on activity that is meant to engage folks who are moving through your city, doing commerce. In this case, these sites, we envision them to be primarily about your residents and stuff that people want to do in your city. So they operate as destinations in a sense. And if you're coming to City Hall for this meeting, whether you're 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late, you're coming here. You're not going to accidentally end up somewhere else. And so in that sense, we think the impact for what will happen on these sites, based on the vision we've presented to you, would be minimal in terms of the utility, potentially meaningful in terms of the nuisance effect. I can't speak to that. One final point I will tell you, and I believe staff can be assistive of this, is there are regional organizations that understand very well what the timing and metrics are for those trains. Each train, how long will it keep that signal down and impact you? That is accessible to you. Okay. So 90 second each time, and ensure there's a backup. There are people who've done the studies on what that means to the actual stoplight and the backup. So if you know, one of them is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. You've heard us say MPO. If you go to their website, I believe you will be able to navigate to information that will give you a sense of not just how long the arm will be down, but what it means to traffic going east and west, to at least be informed. and articulate an opinion to the extent that, that an opinion can have influence. But this is a civic. We see these sites operating as for the residents, so we think they will be here whether they're 5 minutes early or 15 minutes late.
Thank you.
Did that answer the? Okay.
Avenue F?
Okay. If there is an overpass, you're saying, okay.
So that traffic going east, would end roughly around Avenue F. Come back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. He said whatever I'm trying to say. The traffic going east would come down around Avenue F, right? So that means with all the wonderful things that we're saying here, both sides of Blue Heron, the traffic going east would come down at Avenue F, and that traffic would have to come through the community to get to these wonderful locations. That's what I'm trying to get a better understanding. How would, in particular, if you have business over here also, commerce, right? If we can get around that, what you're saying is great to me. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Let me address it really quickly, and one, I won't have an absolute answer for you because none of us have.
Let me ask you this.
Okay.
Which information? What you're discussing with them now. Coming down off the bridge? Yes. I forgot to, I got to do. Go talk to.
That information wasn't provided to them, so they're not familiar with that.
Okay. Well,
No,
yes,
but
sir.
I'll take. Go ahead. You actually had a question.
Right. I really like the idea of leasing property. We 13th and J. That's a $4 million increase. Okay, profit. Is that was in 5 years? 2000. Okay. So what I would like, Brother Jones, is to find out would it be better for us to lease it and create great jobs as opposed to selling it. I know you said $200,000. I'm assuming that's a year.
Yeah.
That's
Well, let me jump in and tell me if I'm not addressing your question. Couple of things. We believe, regardless of lease or sale, there's an opportunity for you to dictate terms as to how the property is operated and how the tenant engages with you. So if we're talking about the hiring and training, there are ways to do it. Our proposal was to suggest what we think is the most powerful way, if you will. So if you're selling a property, you can negotiate with the person buying from you to operate in a certain way, which could include the hiring and training. However, if that person doesn't live up to the expectation, your ability to enforce it is less after a sale. It's not zero, but it's less after a sale than a lease, which is why we recommended that approach. In terms of the numeric figure, I believe you got to the $4 million because you're adding up some odd million versus 10. We look at it slightly differently, but not wrong, just different perspective. You've spent $6 million. You think it's worth $10 million. So if you were to sell it, or let's say get money out, full value out of it, you would get $10 million now, not 4. But the 10 you get would put you up 4. But you would get 10 for your purposes because you'd get back your 6 plus the profit. There was I believe the lady in the back referred to it. We actually think if you lease the building, there's still an opportunity to extract near full value, right? So standard situation is you sell a building and you get 100% of the price. Well, if you lease a building, you will generate a certain income, And if you go to the banks, it's like if you owned an apartment building or a home. When you rent the home, you can go to the bank and tell them your rent is X per month or per year, and they will put a value on it. So we believe whether you lease or sell, you can get near full value. And if we think it's $10 million, we think it's not exact science, but we believe you can get near the same amount whether you're leasing or selling the property if structured properly. And so your CFO, your other staff, and whoever assists you with your banking would need to structure that properly if the mandate is to get us maximum amount of money up front. You understand, Mira? Okay, appreciate it.
Very, very familiar with that process.
No, I just want to say I love this plan, and I think it's a very, very, very great idea. That's only because it turned out the way I wanted it to turn out. So, with anybody else coming in, and we've been studying this, and we've been arguing about it, and it's nice to have an independent staff or other people come in and tell us what we should actually do. And I'm not going to keep you. I'm just saying I'm ecstatic about the way it turned out. And I believe that we will adopt your plans so that we can move on from this, because we've been struggling with this for a very long time. So I just want to say thank you for all your work, and we were glad to have you here.
We can
Betsy,
please
you wanna
announce your name, Mr. Walker.
and my name is Tommy Walker, and I'm just working, trying to get this thing off the ground so we can move forward and leave stuff behind and get it done.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Walker.
I'm not. I just want to, it's just something I'm not sure if they were aware of. I'm not sure if you're aware, but
Introduce yourself.
hi, Bessie Brown. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I just want to ask, are we working on the library now?
Yes, ma'am. We are working on, when you say working on, we're considering some information that's being studied now. I think the library person is in the room tonight, and they're watching and I think participating to some degree in this process, and so they are aware. So when we develop a strategy or a plan, all of this will be inclusive.
Okay, thank you. Also, the public works, I'm not sure if I was here for that, but the public works area, and I think that was Site E. Yes, it was. No, D. No, that was C. You said something about future, the front part for future. Well, we don't have, but public works purchasing had to move out. It's a sick building. And they're over in at the Port Center on MLK. And also, I'm not sure if anybody told you that we need an EOC center for hurricanes. And because of what's there, we should be able to redo, because they already have plans for what. They just changed the plans when they bought the building, the other building. But that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I'm not sure if it was considered in that. Okay.
And building those plans you've already got for that site on the back side, on the back piece of that. The south part of it.
Yeah.
And that's what we recommended.
Yeah, because that was because I'm not sure if you all told you, the EOC center.
But building a multi-story structure.
Yes.
So instead of using up
Yes.
area, you can get
Definitely.
more efficient.
That's what I really wanted to happen, because it makes better sense. And I'm not sure if they wanted to put the EOC center there or put in the police department. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not sure where how everything was looked at. But I just want to know if all these things have been acknowledged. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Just one more. I'm Debbie Isaacs. I'm the mayor's chief of staff. And I just wanted to say thank you so very much. We are pleased with the way that you've reached your decisions and your advice and your opinions. And it really does mirror what the mayor had really been speaking of the entire time. We've always believed that Blue Heron Boulevard should remain the heart of the city, and you even mentioned it, that it is the heart of this city, and that's exactly where all of that people hub should take place. And we always thought that the industrial area was a better use. Industrial activity and jobs was a better use for that site. So we thank you so very much for just dittoing what the mayor said. Thank you.
Boy, you could have
saved us a lot of time. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Please. Thank you. Absolutely.
Hello, everyone. Please, apologies. I'm dressed like a urban rapper right now. My name is Horace Town. Thank you, Mr. Jones. I'm one of the community leaders in this city, and I ran over here because I heard of the news that was going on. And the majority of people in this city have the same thoughts as the mayor. So it's confusing when we have consistent dialogue about relocation of City Hall. The city and the residents are hopeful that economic development and true initiatives for true jobs will be focused on. So at this time, no more wasteful spending, no more wasteful, I want to use a proper word, but bad decisions are consistently made. The public is not heard, and the previous administrations have pretty much been like a runaway train. There's property here that can be utilized. I'm coming late, so I don't want to speak in ignorance or be redundant about something you discussed, but there's so much undeveloped area here that can be utilized. Industrial area is industrial area. City Hall is prime real estate. This is beautiful. I get to pass by City Hall every day and be minutes from the beach. And everyone that I spoke with talks about the history that we have here. I don't know if this will fall under a historic building, but the focus and the community wants this building here. So it is awesome that you can actually come in with evidence, so that will secure the argument for the people. So I'm thankful that it turned out the way we wanted it to today. And yes, Ms. Bass? So I'm hopeful. My question was, I heard someone speaking about the overpass. I don't know about the present utilities in that area or the FEC conflict, even going underneath. I don't know if that's ever proposed, but the overpass would be hideous. It makes no sense. I've been in government 15 years, and some of the things that I've heard pitched just doesn't make sense, and I'm pretty much sure you guys kind of laughed at some of the things that were proposed, but I am thankful that the mayor or whoever brought you guys in, and thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Delcia Brooks Hamilton, and I live in the acreage. I am going to be doing business here at the marina, and I am really excited about the plan that you guys have for Riviera Beach. I do support the mayor and all his efforts, and I also think that City Hall should remain here because it's an icon of a building, and it's historical. And the people of Riviera Beach love this community. And I really want the community to know, to support Mayor Masters in his petition and to keep this area as a charter. And I love Riviera Beach, and I intend to work here, play here, and also eventually move here. So I thank the Urban League for coming to give us your opinion and to show us how we can move forward to create jobs. So I thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, sir.
And then one more
I've been hearing one more a
Yeah,
lot
I know.
here. No, you're kidding.
Have one more.
I'm Kerry Jackson with Reichel Realty and Investments. I've been selling warehouses and office buildings in Riviera Beach for over 25 years. Initially with Fisher Gated Cromwell, Gated Development Company. Gated developed over 200 acres in Riviera Beach. Congress, he put Congress from Blue Heron to Martin Luther King. So I've been working in the city for a very long time. I just wanted to point out, I've sold a lot of warehouses. I worked for CBRE for 10 years, and I did a lot of warehousing in Riviera Beach. When you get into the Avenue L and 13th Street property, a building that size might be difficult to lease out. When you get a company that rolls in with 200 employees and it's a 170,000 foot building, so I just want to point that out. And as far as an interim use for the Broadway site on 22nd Street, I just represented Earl Stewart Toyota. We were trying to put them just for temporary car storage on Broadway, and it wasn't zoned. So I really don't know what interim use we could put there. We might want to rethink if we need to rezone the property now, or just think about what we can put there. It may not be easy to find an interim use, is all I'm saying. So just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I think this is on. No, oh, the hand? Okay, thank you. I want to speak from the mayor's seat. Is it this one or this one? Here? But I didn't want my back. I wanted to address you as well as the residents of Riviera Beach. First of all, I certainly thank you for coming, although I had some, as you probably know from yesterday, some reservations about you coming into the city, because so many times people have come in and they've always told us what was best for the city, and they leave, and then we find out it wasn't best. I would have to say that this is the first time since I have been mayor that we have brought in an outside group that have really done a commendable job, a job that I felt that you went beyond the call of duty to tell us what we thought we knew all along, but now we know that we know that we know that we know that the words of wisdom. So first of all, I think that we owe you an applause for your efforts. I asked Mr. Jones, did he show you the petition, and he said he did not. So that means that no one had access to the referendum petition. But just for the record, it's amazing that what you said tonight, it is amazing to me, and it really isn't. Because when you put God first, as I always do and try to do, it'll turn out right in the end. It's amazing. And once I read it for the record, then you're going to see how amazing it is. So again, we are going to appeal to the residents of Riviera Beach to make sure that if you agree what you saw tonight and you want to have a voice, that you sign the petition, that it can go as a referendum and the charter can be amended, and therefore we won't have to spend any more money to invite any other group in to change what the people would have put there permanently unless they change. And this is what it says. It's amazing to me. Petition for referendum election. An ordinance calling for a referendum election. We, the undersigned, support an ordinance calling for a referendum election to decide if the city of Riviera Beach shall amend its charter to provide that the permanent location of City Hall offices to include the administrative division, fire and police departments, and the library shall be maintained at 600 West Blue Heron Boulevard or on city-owned land within the existing Wells Recreation Complex. The permanent location of the Public Works Department shall be located at 2391 Avenue L, and Fire Station Number 2 shall be permanently maintained at 1663 West Blue Heron Boulevard, all in Riviera Beach. So Plan A, Plan B is exactly what the petition is asking for. Thank you for coming, and thank you for letting everybody know the mayor was right from day one. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I want you to know that we appreciate. I want to thank. I'm sorry.
You might want to stand out there. The camera gets you.
Yeah, I wanted to take a moment to thank the mayor and Danny and Terrence and all of the folks that staff, sir, thank you, that supported this effort. I know that it took weeks to prepare all of the, I think it was north of 1,200 pages of material that was provided. So, I mean, we had the most comprehensive database from which to make a decision. from our perspective, we made choices, just like you all make choices every day, and some are better than others for us, and the same for you. They all have consequences, and in good or bad. And in this case, with the information that we were provided, our choices were better. There's no question about that. So I just wanted to take a minute to thank you guys for all of that.
On behalf of the city and the mayor and city council, I'd like to thank ULI for coming out and providing this valuable service to the city. It's gave us a starting point for us to move forward and a lot of stuff to consider in the city, and I'd just like to say thank you. And I'd like to thank citizens for coming out, participating, and being involved. And don't forget about the second meeting is scheduled for the September 22nd, 6 p.m. at City Hall here in the council chambers. And hopefully an hour before, we'll play this tape again so they'll see the actual reveal by ULI. Thank you.